We're going to continue with SQL today and learn about the where queries. Now let's just review what we did last class. We learned a little bit about SQLite, but more importantly we learned how to import text files. And when you import a text file into SQLite, first you need to make sure you have a database created, and it's also important usually to create a database shell before you import the text file. That way you don't screw up any of your column formats. Remember how we tried to sum up a couple numbers, but they were reading as text and not integers, which prevented us from doing any sort of math to them. So we created a blank database shell and then imported our data that way. Well, we're going to do the same thing today, but after we import the data, we're going to run some queries in SQL. So let's try it out. SQL's standard language, and if you can remember these 5 words or phrases, you're halfway there. Select, from, where, group by, and order by. Almost all your queries will have those words, or at least part of those words in them. So if you can get them down in that order, you'll do pretty well in this class. Select from, where, group by, and order by. And today we're going to go over the select from and where. Now the select line in your SQL code lists the column names that you want. You know, you can select all the columns, or you can select just a certain columns. And to select all the columns, you'd write select and then just the asterisk. And that asterisk, the shift 8, means select all the columns in my table. And you can also add additions to the end of your select line that we'll go over. You can add the count, shift 9 asterisk, shift 0, and that counts the number of records that you have. You can add sum, and that will sum your records, and then you can have average, and that would average your records. And when you do that, you also add as, to name a new field. So the select line, you grab the columns that you want, the asterisk grabs all the columns, and then you can also write a code, the count, sum, and average code, to do math. And if you do add a new field because you're doing math, you rename it with the as word, as. I know this is foreign, but we're going to go over it all today. The from line, this is where you name the table or the query that you want your code to analyze. You know, this is the, just think of where am I grabbing my data from. And you can add multiple tables or queries when you join them together. And that'll be in a couple weeks when we do that. But the from, just think of it as where am I getting my data from. And finally, the where. Think of where as the filter for your data. You know, this is in Excel. If you wanted just quarterbacks and not look at any other NFL player, you'd select quarterbacks in your where line. And filtering fields formatted as a text get single quotes around them. Filtering number fields don't get any quotes around them. So we'll go over them today. And we use the equal sign for direct matches, but we'll also use a wildcard, and that's almost like if you don't know the certain spelling of a name, then you can use a wildcard, and that's using like, L-I-K-E, and then a single quote, a percent sign, the information you want to include, another percent sign, a single quote. And here's an example. If I were to type in where like then single quote parenthesis signs nude, N-O-O-D-L, parenthesis sign, single quote. This would filter for noodles or noodle or any other format of N-O-O-D-L, noodling, etc. And we can have multiple filters by adding a and or. And remember, in SQLite, there's one more hiccup, that the where line is case sensitive. So if I was filtering for my name, Gavin Off, and it was capitalized G and a capitalized O, I'd have to make sure I write that in my where line, because if I had it all lowercase, I would not get any results, or if I had it all uppercase, I would not get any results. So the select, from, and where are what we'll be writing code today for. But first, let's re-import the Charlotte nonprofit data, just like we did last week, to get some practice in. We're going to create a new database. We're going to create a shell for our data. Then we're going to import the text file with the total compensation as a number. Sound good? So I'm going to check out my Charlotte nonprofit data as a text file to make sure the formatting is correct before I import it into SQLite. And here's the file. I'm going to blow up the columns for y'all. And again, we have the person's name, organization, organization type, title, the source where we got their salary, and a field called total compensation that lists how much he or she was paid. And I'm going to make sure right now that I turn the total compensation into a number format, and I'm going to get rid of the additional zeros after the decimal, and I'm going to save it. So it's a number. This way, when I import it into SQLite, I can actually do some math to it. I'm going to say yes. Let's save that one more time just to make sure. And I'm going to close it out and open SQLite. Remember, this is the icon for SQLite. If you don't have it, you can search for it in your search box, DB browser, SQLite. Open it up. Now, the first thing that we do when we import a text file is create a new database. New database up on the left, and navigate to today's folder that you hopefully created this morning. And I'll do that right now. And just FYI, if you haven't created a backup for your Charlotte nonprofits, do that, just so in case we mess with the data, we have a backup ready to go. Okay, I'm navigating to my folder, and I'm calling the file name Charlotte Nonprofits. I'll click Save. So I'm creating a new database in SQLite. And the table that I wanted to be called, I'm going to call that Charlotte Nonprofits as well. I'm going to name the columns and give it a column type. So let's start adding fields. The first one I'm going to call name, and it's text. I'm also going to make it a not null and my primary key. Field 2 was organization, and again it was a text, and I'm going to choose not null. Organization type was the third one. Also a text, not null. I believe the next one was title. Text. Source. Text. And the last one was total compensation. Going to keep that as an integer, as not null, and I'm going to choose some unique values for these. Name was unique value, as well as total compensation was a unique value. So here are my fields, and here are my formatting types: name, organization, organization type, title, source, total compensation. I believe that's correct. Now let's click enter. Now if we look at our table, you can see it's populated with the field names, and now we can import our CSV file. So to do that, you go to File, Import, Table from CSV, and Charlotte Nonprofits, name, organization, organization type, title, source, total compensation. It's reading as the headers on the first column or the first row. It's comma separated, so all that looks good. Click OK. And it says, do I want to replace the existing shell? Yes, I do. So click yes, import done. And to browse the data, you click on Browse Data. So let's make sure that all 50 fields, or I'm sorry, all 50 records imported. I'll scroll down. It says 50, but it also says the total number of rows down here as well. So it looks good to me, and it looks like all of our records imported properly. Now I'm going to do a quick search or a quick query just to make sure my total compensation is actually a number. It looks good, but I'm going to run a SQL query to make sure. Now I'm going to run this query, and you can see that I get 19.96 million, the same number that we got last time. So this is great. I know my data is a number, and we're ready to rock and roll. So a 5-second review from last class. Execute SQL. This is where we'll write our code and get our views. In other words, get our findings in the box below. Our database structure, this is where our tables are saved, and the name, the organization type, so the column headers are there, as well as the type for each column. And once we start writing queries, our views or our query results will be saved down here under views. If you can also click on a table and then click modify table. I'm going to save it, and this lets me modify it if I needed to add a field, so to speak. So you can do that there, and you can also delete a table from here. And for browse, this is where we actually look at our data. I can filter it just by typing in a word here, or when I start writing queries and get views, I can navigate to a view from here. But the browse data is our table. It's our our spreadsheet in Excel. So there are the three main ones. We have database structure, browse data, execute SQL. So let's actually execute some SQL. Click on the execute tab, and we'll start writing queries. And we're just going to concentrate on the select, from, and where lines today. Also, I should say that today is just about learning the code. In other words, the results that we get story-wise aren't going to be very impressive. I'm not going to write some paragraphs in a Word document or a Google Doc like I have been doing. I just want you all to learn how to write the code and get comfortable with SQL. So the findings are not going to be impressive, just FYI. So the three words that we're going to concentrate on today, select, from, and where. I like to capitalize these words just because visually it's going to set them apart from all the other code that you write. So let's say, for instance, in our data, we wanted to select all the data where the title, right here, was president. So you see these lines, president? We wanted to filter out just those records, just like we would a filter in Excel. Here's how you begin to write that code. First word, the most important word often, select. And because I'm interested in all the records, I want to select all the records for all the people who have a title as president. When you select all, it's Shift 8 asterisk. So this is telling my database, or it's telling SQLite to select all records in the table that I name. Hit enter. The next line, you want the actual table that the name of the table. So you write the second word, which is from, and we name our table. In this case, it's Charlotte _ nonprofits. Hit enter. So right now, we're telling SQLite to select all records from Charlotte nonprofits. And then we hit the where. This is our filter. So if I was interested in just grabbing records where the title was president, let me go back to the data, where the title was president, right here, all the way down to here, I put where, title, because that's the field name, equal sign, single quote, and I'll talk about that in a second, and then the word president. But one more hiccup in SQLite, and that is it's case sensitive in the where field, or in the where line. And you see how president is capital P? We need to write it as a president with a capital P, otherwise it will not execute our query. So president. So a couple things about this. One, I like to capitalize, select from and where. Two, you can see that SQLite, sort of like Excel, color codes your queries when it recognizes keywords. And three, text file or text formatted columns, like our title column, gets single quotes around them because it's a word. So if it's a word, here's the text field, and you're trying to search for it, it gets single quotes around it, just like Excel, where we had double quotes. And finally, the where field is case sensitive, so you need to treat it that way. So I'm selecting all records from the table called Charlotte Nonprofits, where the title equals president. Now to run our query, it's this little play button right up in the center, and this says execute all the SQL lines that you have typed or they have highlighted. So click that and we'll see what we get. There you go. Let me spread these out. And these are it says 7 rows that it returned. So these are the 7 people. And you can widen the field as well. There we go. So these are the 7 people with their organization, the type of organization, title, source, and total compensation, whose title is president. Just like a filter in Excel. This sort of makes sense. So I'm going to save this, and to save it, it's this icon, and you drop it down and click Save as View. and I'm going to call this Pres, P-R-E-S. Click OK. It's saved, and now I can navigate back to my database structure, and you can see my view is right here. So if I ever wanted to come back to it, I can just open it up from here and browse the data, and then go to President right there. So browse data, then drop down for Pres and get my query. So how was that? Your first SQL query. Did it work out all right? Next, I'm going to write a where line where the organization type is school. So go back to your main data page, browse data, and then Charlotte Nonprofits in the drop down. So I want to grab all records where the organization type is school. So here's one of them. And there are a few of them around here. Here's another one. So I want all those records. Now what I could do, and what I would do if I was at the Observer, is just replace my where line. That would be the easy thing to do. But we need to practice on writing these queries. So I'm going to click on New Query or Open Tab right over here and get a blank one. I'm going to start from scratch. So let's do it again. Select capitalized because I want to visually set it apart from my other code. Select all. From Charlotte Nonprofits because that's my table name. Where organization type equal sign single quote capital S school. Close it out with another single quote. Now let's run this. So this is selecting all records from the table called Charlotte Nonprofits where the organization type equals school. Now we can run that. And there we go. And it returned 8 rows. And you can see that the organization type for all 8 are school. And let's save that one as school. Click OK. It's saved, and now if we go back to browse data, you can see we have president, our first query, school, our second query or second view. Okay, let's check out the school one real quick, and no need to follow along with this one, but let's just say that I wanted to query this data. In other words, I didn't want to query my entire data set. I could do that as well. And I'll do it by doing this. I'll go back to my SQL, and I would just have to change the from line to school. And what this is saying is not to query my table, but to actually query the view that I created. And then I could fill out my where line appropriately. Maybe I wanted to grab just Providence Day School, or if I wanted to grab just the organization equals Queen's University of Charlotte, I can do that as well. So you can query a table, or you can actually query a view in SQLite. Let's try another one, and we'll try adding an or to our where clause. So create a new blank SQL, and let's select from our data, go back to the main data, Charlotte Nonprofits. Let's select any of them where the organization type was YMCA or the organization type was a country club. So we're going to sort of complicate our where line here. So select, and again I capitalized it. I went all records from Charlotte Nonprofits where organization type equals, again it's case sensitive, remember, so YMCA, single quotes around them, or, and I like to capitalize the or again because it sets it apart visually, organization type equals country club. So this is saying select all records from Charlotte Nonprofits where organization type equaled YMCA or organization type equals country club. Let's run that and see if we get any results. Okay, perfect. This is our first error, which is, like I said last class, errors are great because at least it did not give us a negative answer or a wrong answer, right? So let's see what we did wrong. Now our error ended at organization type. There's no information afterward. So that sort of pinpoints, or at least gives me a general idea on where my error occurred, right? And as I look at it, two things. I misspelled organization. ORGNAIZ, I don't think so. So let me respell that. Organization type. Spelled it correctly this time. Now there's one more thing that I noticed that I did not do. And you can sort of tell because the color coding. Look at YMCA. That's coded red. Country club should also be coded red. Now I didn't misspell country club, right? That's fine, and it's capitalized fine. But do you see what I did do? A double quote instead of a single quote. Watch when I replace the double quote with a single quote. There we go. So this should run where organization type equals YMCA or organization type equals country club. Let me see if it runs. And there we go. So I returned 8 rows from my data. Remember, we started out with 50 rows in our data set. And you can see on organization type, it's either country club or YMCA. So that was an or inserted into our where line. Now let's save this view as CC for country club underscore YMCA. It's saved, and just to show you where, you can go to browse data, and I'm getting all my views, president, school, CC, YMCA, right in my browse data information. Let's try another where query, and again let's use an or to separate the information that we want, and go back to your main data set, and let's grab all information where the organization type equals other and the title equals president. So organization type equals other, or the title equals president, with an or separating the two. So try that on your own if you want, or you can follow along. And you always start with our friend the select. Select all from Charlotte Nonprofits where organization type equals other, or title equals president. Everything looks color coded. I have single quotes this time around my qualifiers, which is good. Let's try running it and see what we get. So again, I have select all asterisk from my table name, Charlotte Nonprofits, where the field organization type equals other, quote unquote, or the title field equals president. Let's run it. There we go. Looks like I got 7 lines returned and no errors. Looks good to me. Did everyone get that? Let's save this query as a view, and let's save it as other underscore pres. Makes sense? Now save that. It saved successfully. Okay, let's try another one. How about? Let's switch out the or in between other and president for an and. Right? And if I was doing this at the observer, I'd cheat and I'd just sub that out with an and run my query again and save that query. But we need practice doing this, so I'm going to create a new SQL and I'm going to type it again. Select all from, I like to capitalize that, Charlotte Nonprofits, and in this case we want organization type equals other and title equals president. So how would you write that? Where organization type equals single quotes for other, and I'll capitalize that, title equals president. So this is saying give me all records from my table where the organization type equals other and the title equals president. So if you think about it, there are likely going to be fewer returns than when I had that or in there, but we'll run it and see what we get. Yep. Last time I think we had 7 with the or. Now if you look at this, it's saying, okay, there are 4 rows returned. The organization type there is other, and of course the title is president. And you can see Kenny, Cindy, Peter, and Tom, and the different organizations they have, and these are the presidents. And of course here you have the total compensation on how much they made. Looks like they all made more than $340,000. Is this sort of making sense? Now what if I throw a wrinkle into this and I said, where an editor said, give me all the records where the source equaled Form 990 2016 and the organization type equaled other, or the organization type equals president. So give me all Form 990s 2016 and the organization type equal other, or the title equaled president. Getting a little bit complicated, but we can work through it. Let's create a new blank SQL file. So we're going to start with our first 2 lines are the same. Select all the records. Perfect. From the table, Charlotte Nonprofits. Okay. And we're going to start with the where. So we wanted where the source equals Form 990 2016. Let's make sure we have that right. Form 990 2016. Okay, so they're the at least some of the records that we wanted. So let's start with them. Where source equals single quote Form 990 2016, and we either wanted the organization type as president, or as other, or the title as president. So and then or. And here's how you do that. And this is where you insert the beginning of your parentheses. So and organization type equals single quote other, capitalize it, remember, or title equals president, single quote again. So let's review this, and it's mainly the where line that we're concerned with, because that's what's different here. So this says where the source equals Form 990 2016, and remember that's an IRS file, and either the organization type was other or the title was president. So let's try that and see what we get. There we go. Let's examine our results. It looks like we got 24 rows. And you can see the one thing that we definitely wanted, we wanted all Form 990s 2016 in our source field. And you can see we have all Form 990s 2016 in our source field. That's great. And this was the or. The organization type was other. And where it's not other, the title should be president. So this is an other, but the title's president. This is school, but the title's president. And the rest, it looks like all others. See that? So we're a little bit complicated with the and the or, but you do that by separating the second qualifier with a parentheses right there. Make sense? Now, speaking of the title being president, look at your data. And in this case, I'm going to go back to the main Charlotte Nonprofits right here. And I'm going to sort it by title by clicking on title. Now look at your title fields. We have CEO/president. And then if you scroll down far enough, we have just president. We already grabbed those. Then if you scroll down far enough, we have president and CEO. Then president E4E relief, a former president, president until 8/16. So there's a bunch of different versions where the title really is president, but he or she may have another title as well. And there's a part of a query in the where clause where we can grab all those different options. And that's called using a wildcard. So I'll show you how to use a wildcard because they're really helpful in querying data. So if we were to grab all records where a president was in the title was in the person's title, where it could be president and CEO or president and CFO or CEO and president or just president, here's how you do that. You start with your select all because we want all the records from Charlotte Nonprofits, where, and it's in title, right? That's the field, that's the column that we're interested in. And we don't want it to be equals. We want to use the like clause, L-I-K-E, and you can see it lights up. And this is part of the wildcard clause, as they call it. Then it's single quote, and it's a %sign, and then you can call it P-R Prez or Prezi, and you can do it in a number of different ways, and let me explain it. What this says is give me all the results where the title is sort of like, and then the %sign says they could be characters before the P, and there could be characters after the I. So there could be characters before the P and there could be characters after the I. And honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, I probably won't include the P because I don't know if in the data all those P's are capitalized. So let me just look for a second. This data is small enough where I can check it out. That P is capitalized. Scrolling down. Okay, it looks like they're all capitalized, so I wouldn't mind including it. But if one of them was lowercase and I had just a capital P, then it would not grab those records. But the like clause, the wildcard clause, says give me all the records where it's PRESI, and before the P and after the I, there could be other characters, other letters, or even numbers. So let's run that and see what we get. Okay, here are our results. We have 21 rows, as you can see down here. Came back. And our titles, President, President and CEO, President/CEO, more presidents and CEOs. There's that President E4E relief. You see how there's a bunch of different versions? A former president, a president until 2016. So that's a wild card. And you use the like, not the equal sign, and then a single quote, %sign, the information that you want, %, and then another single quote. Now let's save that as Prez wildcard in case you want to come back and review it. So Prez_wildcard. Save that, and it's saved successfully. Good job. Now let's take a second to look at the main data again. So I'm going to go back to Browse Data, and this is our main database. It's Charlotte Nonprofits. And what other one could we use a wildcard for? We have CEO/director. Then you have Director of Investments, Director/EVP. So why don't we, without looking at our query that we just wrote, try writing a query that grabs all the records for people whose title include the word director. So try to do it without looking at your last query that you just wrote. So I'm creating a new query page, and you can feel free to follow along. Okay, this is what I came up with, and I didn't run it yet. And you could start with the D and then with the R, or you could start with anything in the middle and it will grab those words, or all the fields including those words. And again, I'm going to look back at my data real quick just to make sure that all the D's are capitalized. I think they are. Oh, nope. See, my query would not grab that. And it would not grab that because the D's are lowercase. So I'm glad I checked. What I'm going to do is get rid of the D. So I have IRECTOR with the % in between. That should work, and you can come up with a number of variations for that, but let's run them and see what we get. And again, I used the like instead of the equals. That's really important. Let's run it and see what we get. Okay. Now, did you all get 7 results? Let me look back at my data just to make sure, and make sure no one has just the title called director. I don't think they do, but they don't. Okay. So I got 7, and a way to double check yourself is to go back to your data and type in the word director. So this one says 8 results. So let's see which one I did not get. Let me see if I capitalize it. Okay, I found the situation. Look at this. The data is dirty. Director in this one is spelled wrong. D-I-R-E-C. There's no T in there. So it's dirty data. My query was right, which is great, but the underlying data was wrong. So what I would do is I'd go back to Charlotte Nonprofits, the main database, without the filter, and let's modify that information to fix it. Okay, let's do that. So I'm going to go to database structure, Charlotte Nonprofits. I save everything, and this looks good. These are all my texts and integers. That's good. Don't need to fix that. What I just need to fix is my actual data. So it was dir. Let me see if I can find it right here. And you see, if you double click on it, it brings up this box to the left, or to the right I should say, and I can fix it. See, TOR, and then apply. There, it changed my data right here, which is perfect. I'm going to X that box out again up here, and now my data is changed and saved, and now my query should work if I rerun it again. But I'm going to make sure my data is saved real quick. I'm going to go back and get rid of that. Okay, now let's execute the SQL again. And there we go. I got 8 rows returned this time. So this is actually a good technique to clean data too, where you can run a bunch of queries to see how many results are returned. Okay, let's save this query as like director. So save it as like director, and we're going to move on to the last 2 queries, which are going to involve numbers. Last 2 queries are going to involve numbers, but they're going to be the same thing in that we're going to use the where line to grab them. So go back to your data and say you wanted to grab all records where the total compensation was greater than 400,000. Total compensation was greater than 400,000. So we would ignore all these down here, right? So let's go back to your execute SQL and create a new file by clicking on the icon all the way on the left. So start the 2 lines, select them from, like always. Select all from Charlotte Nonprofits and where. In this case, we want where the total compensation was greater than 400,000. So total compensation, just like that, was greater than, so the little caret like that, 400,000. Real simple. And a couple things about numbers. Numbers do not get quotes around them. So you see there's no quotes around 400,000, and there's no commas in there either. It's just straight 400,000. So this says give me all records in my Charlotte Nonprofits table in which the total compensation is greater than 400,000. Let's run that. And there we go. Glance at the records and see what kind of results you got. And there should not be any that are less than 400,000. and it doesn't look that way to me. So save that one as great 400,000. Or you can actually save it as greater than. Why don't we do that? Greater than 400,000. And again, we're not using quotes around numbers. We only use quotes around text, and we don't use commas in numbers either. So click OK. That one's saved. And the last one, very similar. Let's select all records from our main Charlotte Nonprofits table where the total compensation was less than, let's say, 550,000. So where the total compensation was less than 550,000. Go to your Execute SQL. Go to Create a new SQL file and select all. From Charlotte Nonprofits, where total compensation is less than 550. I'm sure you can guess by now how you'd write it. Less than 550. 1, 2, 3. 550,000. So select all records from my table where the total compensation was greater or less than 550,000. Let's run that. And again, I should get no records where it was 550 or more. And you can see it stops at 533,000. Poor fella only made $500,000 that year. So let's save that. I just ran it again, but that's fine. Let's save it instead of running it 2 or 3 times as less than 550,000. Okay. So we covered quite a bit today. Are you guys feeling comfortable, worried, a little hesitant or apprehensive, or do y'all have it and like this is a piece of cake? But I tried to take it slow and just go over the select, from, and where. We'll add the group by and the order by lines next class. But for now, here's your homework. Import the CSV file, the text file, into a new database. Call that database incident_2018. Call the table incident_2018 and import the CSV file called incident_2018. And write 3 SQL queries with the where line. And select the following information with those 3. First, select all shoplifting cases from gas stations. Select all cases involving assaults. And select all cases where the initial place, remember this data we looked at before, had a place 1 and place 2. So where the place 1 was residential and the offense was either an overdose or an intimidation. So 3 different queries, save them all. First, select all shoplifting cases from gas stations. Second, select all cases involving assaults. Third, select all cases with a residential place and the offense was either an overdose or intimidation. And make sure you save this database because we'll be using it next lesson when we start writing all our group by and order by lines as well. I'm hoping you guys are getting this. If you don't, let me know if you have questions and I am more than happy to help.